Alright guys, Public back with another video, and we're looking at another dungeon today. Today we're looking at normal Freehold. So I'll explain the same thing I did with my other videos. I'm going to go over each of these dungeons currently that we have on BFA Beta and cover them from a Shadow Breeze perspective, kind of go over some of the mechanics of the dungeon, things like that. So today we're talking about Freehold, which is kind of the pirate-themed dungeon. For me, this is one of the dungeons that I get a lot for some reason. So I've done this a few different times, and each time we do something pretty different. So this is another one of these dungeons that are kind of open area, so you can kind of choose the path that you want to take. But for the most part, you do kill the bosses in the same order every time. I'm sure you can go kind of around and about if you'd like to, but for the most part, it's a pretty linear path dungeon. The only kind of choice you have here is which trash bombs you're pulling and the path of those, because there's a ton of different options. I'd say this dungeon is probably one of the most trash infested dungeons. There's just so many different mobs all over the place. A lot of the packs have, like several mobs in each one, and there's just a ton of it in here. So this is kind of it's only a 4-boss dungeon, but it takes a long time to do right now just because of how many mobs there are in each pack. I wouldn't say any of the mobs are particularly like annoying or do weird stuff. For the most part, it's all pretty straightforward. There are some random charges in here that you can, stun beforehand to get out of, but there's not a whole lot of easy indicators to see it on the trash right now. But other than that, everything's pretty straightforward here. But yeah, like I said, it's just there's a lot of trash to cover. So we'll kind of go over the trash as we see it come through here in this dungeon. But the first boss we're going to talk about right here is Sky Cap'n Crag. So this is an orc pirate that rides a bird. Definitely one of the easiest dungeon bosses I've seen. He doesn't really have any mechanics. Obviously it's normal, but the two mechanics really of this fight are the first one where he's in phase 1 on his bird. He'll do a random charge at a location. You just have to dodge it. That's it. Pretty easy. And then his second phase and kind of throughout the fight, he's just shooting down targets with like a slow cannonball thing, and you just dodge the cannonball. Pretty straightforward, pretty mindless boss. There's nothing really nuanced to this fight here. It's kind of just a quick, easy kill, free loot boss at the moment on normal. So that's kind of it there. Nothing very exciting there. Now, if we move on, we have kind of a council-y fight, which is kind of interesting. To unlock this boss, you have to talk to Volpira throughout the dungeon and basically talk to them and get drunk for a second, or I think it's like a full minute. I think there's 3 of them you have to do. I think one player can do all 3. It's just someone has to talk to all 3, and then I believe that's what actually triggers this boss being active. Before you do those 3 things, the boss has 100% damage increase buff, so it's impossible to pull them before you do this. Currently on beta, this was bugging sometimes, so even after we did all this stuff, we'd have to reset them, and pull them again, and they'd be fine. But basically, once you do all that, the bosses become active, and this is like I said, it's a council fight boss. So there's different captains that you're basically fighting throughout the fight. They all kind of do their own mechanics. There's nothing, like I said, too different about this boss. Nothing very deadly either. There are some cool mechanics for sure. One player will get kind of blacked out, or I'm not quite sure the right phrase here, but your screen goes black and you're not able to see what you're doing. You're still able to target and cast spells. You just can't see anything until your team kills that barrel that's causing it. But I think that's kind of cool. Outside of that, the rest of the boss is, pretty straightforward. Like there's a swirling sword that comes around. You just dodge that. And for the most part, that's basically it. It's a council fight. There's nothing crazy happening here, and you're kind of just burning down the bosses, and that's about it. So again, nothing too crazy in this boss. So kind of the theme of the dungeon so far. But again, just normal. So a lot of trash, but bosses are kind of meh. So now we're going to move on to the third boss, which is titled the Ring of Booty. By far one of the funniest bosses of the expansion so far. This is very, very similar to if you've done old quest lines like the Ring of Blood and Nagrand. There's also one in Icecrown and Zuldrak. I forget their names, but they're all kind of, the idea with it is, I'm not sure if we've seen one in a dungeon yet, but basically you just talk to a guy, he starts it, and you fight mobs repetitively until you get to the final boss. The reason why I think this is funny, the first boss you fight is a pig. It's kind of silly. It's kind of like it's a similar thing to Court of the last boss in Court of Stars. We have to find the right guy with all the clues and stuff. It's a similar kind of like gimmicky mechanic like that. You're not doing damage. You're literally just trying to catch a pig. So you can see footage of this happening now. There's just a pig running around that stuns you if you get in his way, and you're just trying to pick him up. And that's the first boss of the kind of council ring of booty. And the funny part to me is the goblin here is just saying funny stuff the whole time, which is kind of interesting. But so that's the first boss of this little council. The next thing that comes out is, I believe, a Tortolan is how you pronounce that. This one it's pretty straightforward. He basically just throws shells out the entire time that you have to dodge, and that's basically it for this boss. There's nothing too crazy here. Overall, pretty straightforward. And then after that guy, on normal at least, there's only one more left, which is the Shark Puncher, which is an ogre with sharks on his hands. Again, pretty funny to me. So there's really only one mechanic with this guy too. It's just that he'll throw out one of the sharks, and that shark will basically like chase people and flail around and do damage. It wasn't really doing much damage. Like, I was standing in it for like several seconds without really noticing it. It's just like an AoE cleave. Nothing too crazy there, but definitely a fun boss to fight in my opinion. The RP of it is probably going to be pretty annoying in Mythic Plus, so they might tune that down a bit, hopefully, in Mythic Plus, but maybe they won't. They might just add time to the timer again like they do before. But that's basically it for this. And then after that boss, you fight another massive horde of trash to get to the final boss. I mean, you're just doing so much trash in this dungeon constantly. And the trash doesn't do anything quite interesting. It's just kind of there, I guess. But then you get to the final boss, which, again, nothing too exciting in this dungeon, if I'm being honest. The mechanics are pretty straightforward. He just throws out like fire patches on a certain player that spawn from them that the player just moves away from. That's it. So ideally they put these in the corner of the room so they don't impact the rest of the room. But that's basically it. The boss is just like a orc goblin rogue, or sorry, he's a goblin rogue pirate. I'm pretty sure he uses roll the bones a few times. That's like kind of funny, I guess. But I don't know. It's nothing too crazy besides the fire patches, and he throws his blades out once or twice. But visually, it looks kind of cool. But there's really nothing interesting going on with this boss, so nothing too crazy to look forward to here with Freehold. It's just there's a lot of trash here. So be prepared for that when you get to this dungeon. But guys, that's basically it for this dungeon. That was normal Freehold. So we'll go on to the next one in the next video. But if you have any questions about this dungeon, leave them in the comments below. And if there's other videos you'd like to see on the beta, leave a comment below and we'll check that out in the next one. All right, thanks for watching.